Hello, ladies and gentlemen, veterans, dedicated VA employees, everybody watching. I want to first thank all the new subscribers to the channel. Welcome. Thank you for subscribing, checking out what we have going on here at Veteran Lang. As always, I'm Attorney Matthew Lang, VA accredited attorney, years of experience within the VA, veteran myself. Here to build a platform once again where we can gain some knowledge both on the veteran side and the VA side. The idea here is to have a system that works so smooth that essentially I'm without a job and not needed. Now, we've talked about several different things so far, but there's plenty more in the VA world to discuss. And one thing that I keep seeing come up, and even working with veterans, I see come up in consulting with them and in working with their claims, or even just in passing or browsing the internet, is the idea of, can I get service connected for condition B when I've got condition A? And really the big idea here, from what I see it from, comes from like mental health conditions. So I want to touch on that, but I want to give you a little bit bigger of the umbrella. Won't be the full umbrella, because I would like to keep the videos short and give the introductory pieces, and then we get into it more later on. But let's talk about pyramiding. That's what it's called underneath the law. So if you look towards the 38 CFR, it's 4.14. Now, you can do ecfr.gov and find all these references. These are public references, everybody. VA, I know you have some internal links as well that get you there, but just in case you're not logged into your systems or your systems are down and you are looking for some references, just know these are public. Law is public. Law is a public literature out there for everybody to read. So get to know it. It doesn't hurt. There may be some verbiage in there that might be a little legalese, but we can work around that. Okay, anyways, let's get back to our point, right? Pyramiding. So when we look at 38 CFR 4.14, we find the definition of avoiding pyramiding, the avoidance of pyramiding. And the basic concept of it is that the evaluation of the same disability under various diagnoses is to be avoided. Disability from injuries to muscles, nerves, joints of an extremity may overlap to a great extent, so that special rules are included in the appropriate body systems for their evaluation. So if we really want to just take it to a simple level, it's the idea that we can't have two diagnoses that represent nearly the same symptoms or have such an overlap. We can't give two different evaluations. We can't give a separate evaluation for each one of those diagnoses. Now, in many cases, the CFR Part 4, where we find the scheduler for a lot of these conditions, has already put some notes in the various body systems for how to avoid some of this pyramiding, which really is helpful. VA, it's going to sound like I'm beating on you again, but something I've noticed is you've got to read the notes. Read the notes, please. Veterans, I encourage you also to read the notes, because the notes are very informative. I think a lot of times we get stuck looking at just the scheduler on the surface, walking around some blinders and acting like it's black and white. We got to remember, law is not always black and white, and in many cases it never is. So keep in mind that there are other sections in there. There are sections that involve the respiratory conditions, for example. It'll tell you that there's such an overlap in it that conditions that use codes from this range and on can't be separated at all. Now, there's some legalese in there that might cause some confusion, I get it. But that's just an example of pyramiding. We have it inside of our code in many places that now helps us to know that these are considered by the law to be too overlapping and we can't separate them. Now, let's go back to an idea that I see a lot really as well. Mental health conditions. Now, mental health conditions, if you look underneath 4.130, you're going to see a little intro piece there, and you're going to see a mini diagnoses. Now, keep in mind, the law is not going to write for every single diagnosis. You're not going to get a code for every single diagnosis. But understand the concept here that there's for the main part, that there's a general rating formula for mental disorders. Sure. Could there be one or two out there that doesn't fit there, say eating disorders according to the rules? Yeah, sure. But for the most part, we look towards a general rating formula. And I think this piece here really talks about that pyramiding idea where we can't overlap symptomology. So, for example, veterans. If you have a service connection for PTSD, but you also know you have a diagnosis for depression, but depression's not mentioned as a service-connected condition. And so maybe you're curious. Maybe you're curious of going, well, should I get that service connected? Should I get that depression service connected as well? Okay, I get it, sure. If that's what you want to do, I'm not here to advise you on that, but I'm going to let you know and inform you in this video that it probably wouldn't make a whole lot of sense because it's a generalized formula, and the VA would be pyramiding to give you separate evaluations. So we can see that there is a code for PTSD 9411 in this case, and we have some depression codes in here as well. For example, now that I'm making this video, I'm not going to find it quickly, am I? 9435, I believe. Yes, 9435. Huh. I do remember something every now and then. All right. So the point is 9411 and 9435 are both listed in this list following the general formula, which means both of them are going to be rated with the same symptomology. They're also known to have pretty much the same symptomology. So if you have PTSD and depression, you're rated for one. Again, I'm not here to advise on which one, but you got to understand that even if you are now later service connected for depression as well, and there's some other rules that are going to play a factor in all this here. That's why one reason it's hard for me to say, because I don't know the facts of your case. But the main point is because we have a pyramiding issue, they're going to get combined together as one evaluation. So if you have 50% right now veterans for PTSD, you get service connected for PTSD and depression down the road, where the evaluation symptomology would still meet the 50%. You're ultimately just going to have now a service connection for PTSD with depression, or PTSD and depression lumped together as one for 50%. So that's kind of the idea. You can see this also in even some other conditions like in the joint. So 4.1 or 4.71a, you'll find the musculoskeletal section for the joints. You'll see that there's a general formula for the spine, and this works really the same. So we don't want to have an overlapping pyramiding piece. Now, what's interesting about that general formula is it still breaks down a lumbar and a cervical spine. So your neck and your lower back, which really it puts your lower back and your mid back as one piece underneath the law. Kind of seems a little odd, but I think it's the relationship, again, the symptomology between the two and the function of the two that are just too closely related. That would be my opinion and assumption in why it's connected like that. But the idea here is now we're not necessarily pyramiding. We can get a separate evaluation for here in the neck and down here in the lower back underneath the general schedule because it is listed that way. But we wouldn't be able to have an evaluation for the mid back and the lower back because that would be considered pyramiding the way it's written in the general schedule, and the way it's combined is one evaluation in one piece of the back. Now, let me take you down another crazy story. So if you haven't already found this totally nuts, and you're sitting here going, okay, maybe I'm getting this and maybe I'm not. Why we're in the musculoskeletal section, let's look at something like the knees. The knees are interesting. So for the longest time, the VA, especially when I worked there, working disability claims, processing and deciding them, had always deemed that veterans, you couldn't get separate evaluations for your knees. Say for limitation of motion and extension and limitation of motion and flexion. Well, the idea is because even though there's a code for extension, one code for flexion, they were both based upon range of motion. So it would seem on the surface that the correct determination would be not to give separate evaluations for the two, because it would be pyramiding, as it would be the same disability essentially underneath maybe the same symptomology or similar symptomology, even though the diagnoses could be considered different. For a long time, that's the way it was. Later on, courts came into play and said, we make a different interpretation. We feel that the way the code is written, that one evaluation can be given for extension because it's evaluating range of motion one way, and you can get the flexion as well, because even though they're both range of motion, they are opposite directions essentially, and that's kind of the way I always interpreted it when it was told to me. So it is fascinating. So this is one thing that we got to work with, again, veterans and KPA employees, is that we can't just look at sometimes the surface, and most of the time we should not be looking at just the surface of the rule. So even when pyramiding says to avoid various diagnoses that have from the same disability or same symptomology or overlapping symptomology, or however you define it, you got to know that there might be other laws out there, whether they be by the courts or other statutes, other code, other CFR references that say, well, maybe not so much. Is it pyramiding? And then something else will say, well, yeah, it's pyramiding. I think in some of those respiratory ones, from a medical standpoint, not being a medical provider myself, I question if we could make the argument that they aren't really pyramiding, but the law is deemed those to be pyramiding, so they do have a note in there prior to the scheduler in a different section of the CFR. I'm hoping a lot of that made sense, ladies and gentlemen. It's a really big piece I was trying to really water down a lot to make some sort of sense out of it and use various examples. The law can be tricky. It can be confusing. It takes sometimes a lot of practice, and I suppose that's why they call my profession a practice. But the main concept I wanted you to understand today is just because you have one condition and another condition doesn't mean the law is going to allow you to have separate evaluations for the two. Now, again, totally up to you if that's what you want to do, is try to get service connected. Maybe it comes with a higher percentage, maybe it doesn't. Sometimes the idea as well could be that even though that they may be deemed to be pyramiding, the VA, you may be able to use a different code based upon a different diagnosis. And maybe that provides a higher evaluation in the end based upon the criteria. But again, plenty of other rules out there that could completely counter maybe even some of that I said. Just know, pyramiding is an issue, veterans. I would recommend always, if you have these questions and you're curious, go read the law. Go read it and see kind of what your interpretation is at first. If it doesn't make sense, then give me a call. Go to my website, veteranlang.com. I got a phone number up there. I've got a slightly bigger staff now, and we're continuing to grow as we can help more veterans. Give us a call. Schedule a case evaluation with myself. I will call you up or come in and sit down here in our new Arizona office over here on 13991 Grand Ave, Suite 100, here in Surprise, Arizona, just across the parking lot from the VA clinic here. We can talk about this more in detail and see what my opinion is, and maybe even refer you to somebody else if you want another opinion on it. I'm okay with that too. So veterans, it's okay to seek the help, but it's okay to read what's here too and try to understand it as well. To KV employees, I hope you read this and understand this and try to understand it. And again, if it doesn't make sense to you, I would say seek out your trainers, seek out mentors. Maybe they understand it, maybe they don't. I found a mix kind of the issues when working with the VA. But without trying to really cross any lines that may exist or invisible lines that may exist, reach out to me. I'll let you know how I interpret it. Maybe it's something you can use as well. So VA employees, consider me a resource as well. Again, we're here to all complete the same mission, and it's to help the veteran. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Veterans Day and VA employees, everyone watching, I thank you again. It's been a fantastic year so far. January's coming towards an end. I hope all of you have got an opportunity to get a good start on those New Year's resolutions. I hope your year has been one of the best years you've had so far and continues to be, if that's the case. With that, don't forget to subscribe, to like. Let's get the word out there. My only goal for this channel is, again, to build a platform where we can all discuss VA law together. And as I've mentioned, put me without a job because the system has now become that easy and smooth for everybody to work it. I will see you in the next video. Thank you again. Have a wonderful day.